This should be pretty neat. Hi everybody, welcome to Sprague Woodturning. My name is Jim. If you haven't been here before, thanks for stopping by, and of course to my subscribers, welcome back. So this week is going to be another resin and maple burl project. As you can see, this thing's in pretty rough shape. So this is not safe to turn as it sits, and this burl here is a prime example, a good use for resin. So that's what we're going to do this week. So let's get this rounded, get the bark stripped off it, and we'll go from there. And if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. Anyway, let's get to the bandsaw. Okay, so we're all cleaned out. I'm going to go with a smaller bucket, and I actually had to put some cleats on the bottom of it so it would sit flat. Anyway, I'm just going to hot melt glue this to the bottom of the bucket, and we'll get some resin done. Designer Epoxy Deep Cast. Happy Friday, everybody. Hopefully everybody's having a good week. So I've got some big news. Designer Epoxy is stepping forward and sponsoring the channel. So at the end of the video, I'll give you the details as to what they're offering. So make sure you stick around and enjoy the video. All right, so I'm going to use some Burl Red and Crystal Purple. I like the look of that. Now I'm going to assume that this is not going to be enough. Okay, so I'm going to pour from each side. I want to try and keep these resins separate. Might be a bit of a joke though. There's a lot of cracks and voids in this, so I know that this is going to eat up a lot more of this resin. So I'll probably end up mixing up the same amount. That I'm not real concerned about. It's going to get turned away anyway. There, my only fear is that that is going to float. Let's hope it doesn't. So this is my little resin area, curing area. This is electric heater, baseboard heater. This needs to be, 70, 75 degrees and up for it to activate the resin. So it'll sit here for a couple of days, and then it'll be all good to go. That board just knocks out and this falls down, so it's not in the way when I'm not using it. Okay, so that's 40 hours in the pressure pot. Let's see what we got. Boys, did that level ever drop? Looks pretty cool. Let's get it out. I don't know about you guys, but I really like that swirl. Really like this detail too. Anyway, let's get it on the lathe. So yeah, had some issues with this. The hot melt glue didn't hold it to the base of the bowl, so it lifted, and I ended up losing, probably 3/4 of an inch in height on this piece. Aggravating to say the least, but it's just kind of, you got to roll with the punches, and that's a lot of times that's what woodturning is all about, cutting around defects and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly show that the resin can be so messy. But in regards to resin, and I know there's been some comments on my channel about how they think that resin's wasteful and that kind of stuff, and there's certainly a lot of truth to that. But if I didn't have the resin to work on this project, I never would have been able to do it. There was no way that you could hold that safely between centers. Or even there's so many cracks in the bottom of that I wouldn't even be comfortable putting a faceplate on it and putting it on the lathe. And you certainly couldn't do it on the top because there was a big void. And of course, I'm using my favorite tool, which is the 5/8 bowl gouge from David Ellsworth, made by Crown. And yeah, I'm just trying to get this thing whittled down, get it round and cleaned up essentially, and then see what I'm going to do with this piece. Yeah, my first thoughts when I first put this in the pressure pot was that I would do kind of a semi-closed form, and that way I'd be able to keep some of that detail, that weathered looking detail on the bowl. But when it lifted up off the bottom, when the blank lifted up off the bottom of the bucket, just kind of threw it out the window and decided just to go with a normal bowl shape. Yeah, just showing off how many cracks there are. A few little spots where the glue was still stuck to the bottom of the blank. So, I had to keep going to get rid of those. So that made the bowl even shorter in height as well. Bit of a disappointment. Yeah, here I'm parting off the little waste block at the end and just finishing up with a handsaw. And of course, my favorite way of mounting pieces to the lathe, and that's hot melt glue in an electric frying pan and a waste block on the bottom of the bowl. While we're waiting for the hot melt glue to harden up, I thought I would sharpen, or attempt to sharpen, the Easy Hollower here. Sorry, the Easy Tools Finisher is what this is. Now, of course, this is carbide, and because it's carbide, you can't typically sharpen it on a normal grinder. It's got to be done with diamond. There's the finisher. So this is a 1200 grit diamond stone. And what I'm going to do is use Windex on it as the lubricant. And that will help clean the stone. And what I'm also going to do is use a marker and just cover the surface of this. So then, place it down on the stone. Now it probably doesn't matter if you do it in a circular fashion or back and forth. Back that out a little bit. Now you can't do this with a negative rake scraper. You could probably though make a jig to do this. You just would have to be orientated in this kind of orientation. Here, let's look at that. So as you can see, all of the marker is gone. And it certainly feels like the edge has been restored to it. We'll know when we do the inside of that bowl. Anyway, that's just a quick tip. So yeah, back on the lathe now, and of course it's never going to probably be centered, so got to just clean up a bit. Not a real big deal. You might end up losing maybe a 1/16 of an inch off the overall size of the bowl. But of course, this method allows you to finish the inside and the outside of the bowl completely. You don't have to worry about putting your hands on the bowl when you're finishing it. You can just grab it by the waste block, and then, you know, there are many ways to turn bowls, and I'm not saying that this is the best way at all. It's my way, and if you want to try it, certainly go ahead and do so. I think you'll really like this method. Yeah, another big reason why I prefer this method is because I'm not a fan of internal mortises. So, you know, you expand your jaws into the bottom of the bowl, and if you don't have a lot of really good meat there, there's a chance that it's going to break that apart, or it can be quite easily ripped out of the chuck as well. So you have to be really, really light with cuts. Anyway, I was shown this method by a professional turner from my home province of New Brunswick, and ever since I was shown this method, I don't do anything else. Yeah, the only time you'll see me deviate from this method is when I'm doing fractal burnt bowls, and there's a lot of heat, a lot of moisture, and the glue tends to delaminate from the base of the bowl. So I use an external tenon. I grab it with the chuck. That is certainly a better method than expanding jaws. But anyway, give it a go. Yeah, and here I'm using the Easy Woods rougher. I did find it to be a bit grabby, so I went back to the gouge. It's certainly something I'll revisit with it. It wasn't a negative rake scraper, so I know I've heard lots of comments if you have negative rake scrapers that they certainly aren't grabby like that. So maybe that's a future purchase. Yeah, back to the rougher. And as you can see, every now and then you'll see me tilt it up to see if being below center helps with the scraping cut. And, you know, it's all right. Like I said, something I'm going to further investigate with. And here's where I noticed a problem. I guess I didn't tighten the screw down on it. So anyway, I was getting a weird feeling, and it's hard to explain. When you do something for so long, you kind of, you get the feel of what's normal and what isn't. And something didn't seem right there. And then, of course, the scraper was loose. So always check that. I know it was a quick shot there, but there was a lot of tear out in the resin from using the rougher. So back to the bowl gouge, and here I'm using the finisher. And of course, the finisher has a much smaller contact area, so that's why it's not so grabby, and it did a good job of cleaning all that up. As you can see, a lot of the tear out and chip out is gone. Well, so far, what do you think? It's not exactly the form I was going for, that's for sure. I was just losing way too much resin, so I had to cut my losses. Anyway, I've got a pretty major chip out there. So, and there's just few small little holes, but I mean, look at how all these cracks have been filled in. Crazy. And on the back side, designer epoxy's done really, really well here. So anyway, my last video, mixed up some thin CA glue from Starabond. It's best to use the thin stuff. And what I'm going to do is mix up put a little bit of Burl red in there, pigment. Don't need a huge amount. And the crystal purple. Again, these pigments, you can get them all from Designer Epoxy. May have to adjust that. Also going to use the accelerator. I am worried about this chipping out worse. So it's the end of the day here today anyway. And I could have mixed up more epoxy. But you know, I think this will be just fine. Anyway, I'll just go around and fill in any holes that I see. But you know, there's not very many. Again, I realize it's probably tough for you guys to see, but I gotta be able to see. Anyway, there's a few more to go on the outside, and that'll be it. See you tomorrow. So yeah, it's the next day, back on the lathe, and you know, just cleaning off the surface. That CA glue is really tough to sand, so it's best to get rid of any of the stuff that's on the surface of the bowl that you don't want. Again, shear cuts. Fine shavings. When you're down to this stage, that's what you're looking for, really fine shavings. And if you're getting those really fine shavings, you know that you're probably going to be successful. Yeah, and you know, I've said this in the past, I typically use 3 gouges. So I'll sharpen all 3 gouges at the beginning, and that way it just limits how much time I spend on the grinder, because I'd sooner be turning than grinding. Yeah, I'm using the 3.5-inch dimple discs from sandpaper.ca. There's a link in the description for 10% off your next order. Just use code INLAYGEM. And the main reason why I like these is because they wrap around the sanding pad. You tend to get less dig-ins with them. They're just a great sandpaper. So there I'm showing the speed at 1400. So my drill spins at 2800 RPM. If I can run the lathe at 1400, that's what I prefer to do. It just gives me a better sanding cut, and that's why I like to do that. Most times you can do it, a lot of times you can't. It just depends on the bowl and how it's behaving. Yeah, and here I'm using my little right-angled air-powered sander. And it can actually has an RPM on a 20,000. I don't use it at that high, but I guarantee it's probably doing 6,000 anyway. So let me know your thoughts on that. A lot of people say that you're supposed to sand resin at lower speeds. Is that just strictly resin pieces where there's no wood, or is that a combination of the both? I'm having great results doing this, so I can't see me doing it any other way. Yeah, so before I put any finishes on, I want to buff with red triple E, and this is from the BL buffing system. And that just cleans up any little scratches that are in the resin. And so when the finish goes on, it looks pretty much flawless. You do have to sometimes stop the lathe and then kind of polish out those areas where there's just strictly resin for the best look, and then blend it in. Certainly a lot easier to do it on the outside than it is on the inside. Denatured alcohol, because the buffing compound will leave behind a residue. So just keep applying it until you get a clean rag. Then you know you're ready for finish. First coat, wood bowl finish by General Finishes. Since we didn't use any sanding sealer or Yorkshire grit, this will probably end up taking 3 coats. I do like that. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little red spot in there, and that's where the pigment was too strong. Pretty darn cool though. Yeah, so it's the next day, and I'm buffing again with the triple E, and that just really does a good job leveling the finish. Denatured alcohol again to clean the surface. Now that there's a coat of finish on there, it didn't actually leave much buffing compound behind, so that's good. Okay, this is the second and last coat. The great thing about using that triple E buffing compound between coats is that a lot of the finish stays on the bowl. With the 4-0 steel wool, it kind of strips it back and you remove a lot of it. And if you were using a Scotch Brite pad, it would be the same idea. But this levels the finish out, takes out any lumps and bumps that are in it. And then when you put on the second coat of finish, it covers better. So hopefully this will increase production, and anytime you can do that, it's a good thing. Yeah, so this is the last step, and that's I don't go back with the triple E after the second coat. I just use the white diamond, and that cleans up any little bits that maybe got stuck in the finish, or hopefully it'll take them out. and it does a real good job polishing the surface. So again, using my vacuum chuck system to hold the bowl so I can finish the base. Again, light cuts here. Don't want to be too aggressive. This bowl I think was pulling, I think I was able to pull about 23 inches of vacuum on this bowl. And typically on the bottom I can start at 180, and so I went from 180 to 800 here on the bottom. Let's finish this video up. Alright, that's it for the video. I'm going to give you a last look at this. This ended up being 8.5 by 3, 8.5, 9 by 3 inches. I mean, Designer Epoxy has absolutely hit it out of the park on this. With all these cracks and voids, if you think about it, what I had to fill is virtually nothing. Crystal purple and the red is just beautiful. It is a little translucent, you can see through it. And the information is on the bottom, but the bottom is so dark and busy that it's a little hard to pick out. Again, this lifted up off the bucket and it kind of threw off my design. I wanted kind of a semi-closed form on this, but anyway, you just got to roll with the punches when you're doing wood turning, because it happens all the time. When you're cutting around defects, you'll end up with a different shape. And I like this shape. So, speaking of Designer Epoxy, Designer Epoxy has come on board to sponsor the channel. And so right now what they're offering is on orders over $200. When you go to their website, you'll get these 2-ounce packets. You get 5 of them for 10 ounces total, and $10 off your order. And so that's designerepoxy.ca. I'll put all the details down below. So thank you so much for coming on board, sponsor the channel, and actually my subscribers, and helping out my subscribers as well. And I know a lot of my subscribers are American. They do ship to the States. Your dollar is a lot better than ours, so make sure you give them a serious look. It may be worth your while to order from Designer Epoxy. You've seen the results. Look, I'm relatively new at resin, but I can't imagine any other resin performing as good as this does. I mean, I'm just going to call it the way I see it. So yeah, that's it. Don't forget about sandpaper.ca. And Starbond adhesives are in the description below. Oh, Designer Epoxy, use code InlayGem21. I forgot about that. InlayGem21 for Designer Epoxy, and for sandpaper.ca and Starbond adhesives, it's just InlayGem. So next week I've got a special thing coming up. I'm really hoping that it's going to work. It could quite possibly be the nicest thing that I've ever made. So we'll see how that goes. We've got a lot of hurdles to get through for it to happen. But anyway, I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag. You're going to have to come back and see what's going on next week. What else? I guess that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Until next week, take care, stay safe, and don't forget that bell, and that thumbs up will certainly help out the channel as well. See you next week.